Mary Lou. Unfortunately, politics never stops. A recent poll, I'll quote you here, LitTalk revealed that 6 in 10 people believe that the performance of your Vice President, Deputy First Minister Michelle O'Neill has been bad or awful this year. In that same poll, she had a -39 leadership rating score, down from +17 in June. Arlene Foster sits on -2, Michelle O'Neill -39. Why is your Vice President, the Deputy First Minister of Northern Ireland, the least popular political leader by a long way?
Well, I have every confidence, Thomas, that polling will happen, which will have Michelle as the most popular and most effective in time. These things go in cycles. That's the only way I can explain that. What I can tell you is that Michelle works incredibly hard, that she is, above all else, a problem solver. I think some people, you need to work with Michelle to actually gauge the extent to which and the lengths that she will go to find consensus and to bring people along and to be constructive. And you saw that in the Brexit initiatives that were taken kind of along that act.
Yeah, Mary, I don't think anybody is questioning Michelle O'Neill's work ethic as such. But I mean, by any metric, moving from +17 in any opinion poll to -39 from June to October is a significant reduction in the faith that people have in your leader. I wonder why that is, because I'm looking from June to October, and I'll give you another stat from that same poll, and you'll say, I'm sure, the same thing about polling, and I'm sure this would come up at some stage. The same poll revealed that 47% of people believe that the Bobby Storey funeral will have a bad or somewhat bad impact on your party. And between June and October, that was a significant event. Do you have any regrets as to your own conduct or the conduct of Michelle O'Neill?
Well, just to say on the polling, because we just had a conversation around not polls, but elections that went well and went badly. And I would just make the point to you that these matters can be cyclical, and you're not stuck ever, for good or bad, in one, stationary position. The nature of politics is that it moves and it responds. And you asked me about Bobby Storey's funeral, and you will know that both I and indeed Michelle have acknowledged, and I acknowledge again, that the number of people out on the streets for the funeral caused obvious concern. And of course I regret that. I deeply regret that. The last thing, I'm not in the business of upsetting people or of causing angst to people. And I regret also, if I can say, the fact that Bobby's family have had to listen now on and off over a number of months to a controversy around a figure, albeit, a public figure, but nonetheless their loved one. And I think that's really difficult. There has been no experience more difficult in COVID than bereavement and burial. And I'm very, very sorry for the Storey family that happened. Yeah. And of course, I acknowledge.
But with respect, Mary Lou, and I want to move on in just a second, is the reason in part that there is so much consternation about that event? It's in many ways, it's nothing to do with Bobby Storey's family, or indeed the fact that it was a funeral. Is it not the case that it was a high-profile event of any kind, and senior figures within Sinn Féin were seen to be and perceived to be not obeying their own rules? In many ways, it was completely irrelevant that it was a funeral and the tragedy undoubtedly that was being felt by Bobby Storey's family.
Well, you might say that, but I would remind you that it was a funeral, and in the course of this whole COVID emergency, very hard things have been asked of people, and I think the most difficult has been around funerals and burials. And I mean, I absolutely recognise that people who did not have the kind of acknowledgement that they would have wished to have for their loved one saw large crowds on the streets in Belfast and felt hurt by that. And I deeply regret that. I recognise also that the families and those who organised the funeral did make efforts to keep numbers down and so on.
I want to move on to COVID in just 1 second, Mary Lou. I just wonder whether there's an ever so slight political spin between saying that you regret the consequences of that event and actually apologising for being there.
No, well, I mean, I apologise for the consequence. So I'm not trying to be, I'm not trying to be clever, Thomas. And if you wish to kind of unpick my language, please feel free to do so. I'm not playing a game with this.
Yeah.
This
are you sorry that you attended?
Well, it was a funeral, and I'm not. I was asked. I was invited by the family. I did one of the readings at the mass. I was more than happy to do that. Do I regret doing that? No, I do not. Absolutely not.
So you don't regret going, but you do regret the consequences of going.
I regret the fact that the funeral was a bigger affair than some may have wished, and I regret above all that it caused not for political pundits or for the purposes of, you know, playing a game, a political game of tennis, but for people who looked on and who were upset by that. Of course, I regret that.